So I'm gonna press the blue button. I think it says got it or something like that.
Oh, you don't have to press anything. I have the presentation up. If that's
But the recording thing just popped up on my screen. Do I have to press anything for that?
Oh, you might have to do that, yeah.
If my mouse will. There we go.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, we got it started. So whenever you are ready, Amy. And just so you all know, I'll be helping out with some of this presentation too.
So Maddie's gonna be another set of eyes for me due to that visual impairment that I disclosed. I can't read. A lot of the stories that you hear are from my own life, but some of this is memorized. We are talking about self-esteem and relationships, which can be a difficult concept for some people, but we're gonna try and unpack it today. So,
Now we're on the disclaimer.
Disclaimer. Okay, hi. So this disclaimer is a very important thing to recognize. I am only one person who happens to be in a wheelchair and have a disability. The stories that I disclose are not the story of every single person with a disability or diagnosis. They're just mine. And I am comfortable being open and honest and sharing the stories that I choose to disclose. We're gonna do question and answer at the end, which we'll see how much time we have left, but I am excited to get into a conversation with you guys and see what we can come up with.
This slide says self-esteem. It's the title.
So self-esteem, what is it? The concept of it is like having, Maddie, can you help me read some of it off?
Yes.
Because this is going to be complicated, but Maddie, if you don't mind helping me read some of it off, that would help.
Yeah. Confidence and satisfaction in oneself and self-respect. It includes being comfortable in who you are, building a positive opinion about yourself, knowing you're worthy, advocating for yourself, taking pride in who you are, in my body, my mind, my choice.
So, my body, my mind, my choice has become a mantra for me, and it's a part of a couple different curriculums. I don't share this with a lot of people, but I tend to also use it when people are trying to like touch my phone or touch my belongings. I'm like, whoa, that's my phone, my body, my mind, my choice. Or I'll sometimes use my privacy, my phone, my choice, my life. So we will, if we go to the next slide.
Self-esteem in relationships.
Can you help me here?
Yeah. Self-esteem and believing in yourself is important for relationships because what you believe about yourself is what you share about yourself to others. Confidence is important in order to begin a relationship, and taking ownership of your body and your relationships and your decisions is important and relevant to your self-esteem?
When I wake up every day, I make a choice. Because a lot of it is I have to remember that I am my own person. When you have a physical diagnosis like I do, sometimes, at least me, can lose the idea of, hey, I'm an autonomous person, I can do things on my own. Sometimes it's easier to just let people help, but then sometimes I take pride in dealing with the whole, I want to do it by myself. So here we go to the next slide.
Yes. This is some
These are
research.
some statistics, yeah?
Yes. Some research on self-esteem shows that disabled people can face more problems with self-esteem than non-disabled people in many situations. Higher self-esteem also improves quality and satisfaction with romantic and social relationships. And also higher self-esteem can improve your mental and physical health. So it's a very important thing to discuss, especially in the context of disability. Next slide says factors impacting self-esteem.
Ableism is one. You guys can see there's a bunch of bubbles on the screen. And I put them as bubbles for a reason. Because to be honest, each one of these bubbles can represent a water balloon that can sometimes take my self-esteem down a notch. So things like ableism, discrimination, family dynamics, people's lack of understanding, and those can all public perceptions. So when I was in my old relationship, the public perception of my old relationship took a hit, or my self-esteem took a hit because of all that mess. Because people just, for some reason, I don't know why, did not understand it. They thought that I, for some reason, wasn't a worthy partner. And that's why my self-esteem took a hit. And there's some other factors too, Maddie, if you want to read off the ones that I didn't mention.
Yes. Masking, which is pretending to hide or pretending to not have a disability or is trying to hide your disability. Medical history, education, lack of autonomy, which is when people take away your right over yourself and making your own choices. Social isolation, the medical model of disability, inspiration porn, and societal views are some other things that Amy came up with here.
So if we go on to the next slide, if you guys need me to slow down, I can. Of a medical model versus social model.
Yes.
Is that where we're at? Okay, So what is the medical model? The medical model basically states that my diagnosis is the problem, and sometimes it can even go as far as to say my diagnosis needs to be cured. Whereas the social model says, okay, well, what barriers are in society that make it harder for people with disabilities or unique abilities, whatever word you want to put there, function in society? So I grew up in the medical model where I essentially wanted to be cured. And we're gonna get into some of that later on in the presentation. But when I found out about the social model, it blew my ever advocating mind, because I just did not have a clue what to do. And the timing of it was quite fun too. So there's a lot of stuff that can go in there, and I think the social model can do a lot for individual self-esteem as well, versus having people constantly feel like you need to be cured. Because eventually, if people keep telling you that you need to be cured, at least I started believing them, and that kind of put some pressure on me that I didn't necessarily need or want. So if we can move on to the next slide.
Yep. Ableism.
So, ableism, and what in the world is it? So Maddie, I might need your help because it's a text heavy slide, but ableism is the stereotype. My definition of it, let me put it this way, is the stereotype and stigma that individuals without diagnosis, or in the able-bodied community, as I so call them, can put on me. So I think ableism is a huge part of the issues that I have faced in my life, even before I knew there was a name for it. But Maddie, if you want to read some of the text off of here.
A lot of ableism is based on the idea that disabled people are incapable, which can lead to sadness, self-doubt, frustration, and or anger. And in some cases, it can cause internalized ableism, which is when disabled people start to believe ableist thoughts about themselves. For example, am I ever going to find a partner? Or if I can't do X, that means I'm not worthy. And it can affect people's self-esteem in that way.
If I can't do X, that must mean I'm not worthy. That's something I've faced for many years, but I think it's mostly just because I internalized what was being told to me by no one specific person, but just by the environments I was in. To be honest, I still deal with some of the internalized stuff to this day. So if we go to the next slide, I'm not even sure technically what. Okay, so movies, media portrayal of people with diagnosis, I believe can sometimes make a break. So I don't know if anybody has seen this movie or recognized this poster, but it's from a movie that came out, I can't even remember what year. Do you by chance remember what year? It's kind of
Probably around 5 or more, like more than 5 years ago.
So it's a movie that the individual is one of the main characters is a quadriplegic who was even in a relationship. But the movie script and his lines focus everything on what he can't do. So it was kind of medical model based. It was very, very, very confusing. On a personal note, this movie made me literally bawl my eyes out. It was very focused on the ability to have sex, and it led to a very interesting conversation with my ex and I. After he calmed me down for 20 minutes, as I legit just bawled my eyes out, because the movie's ending, I don't want to give it away, is very, very harsh. And it is very, very tough to see. The last thing I need is for people who are newly injured to watch this movie and think that the ending of this movie is a possibility for them. So when it gets into media portrayal, the only thing that I ever ask for is to have a balanced portrayal of someone with a diagnosis' life. And here's the second thing I wish I could beg for, is to have whatever diagnosis you are portraying have a representative or a consultant on the writing team, because it's just important to do that so that disability is not misrepresented in the media. Because remember, individuals like me, we look for ourselves in media portrayal. So if you want to go to the next slide, that would be awesome. Okay, I think this is a quote, because I believe I see quotation marks. But Maddie, can you be my eyes?
Accepting your disability is an individualized journey.
And I don't have a lot to say about that. I just need whoever is listening to this recording and needs to hear that, and to hear my voice and hear me say that everything that you're going through right now is going to be okay. It's all for a purpose, and there's a reason for it all. And I'm here to help with some of the misconceptions with it too. So, but what do I mean by journey? It's a roller coaster. It is a legit roller coaster. I've been up and down and all around pretty much my whole life with it. But if we go to the next slide.
The self-acceptance chapter.
Okay, so I might need you to move my eyes on here.
Yes, this is text written by Amy. My story is full of peaks and valleys when it comes to self-acceptance. I am a strong self-advocate now, but that was not always the case. Every new hurdle that I faced was a chance to choose if I was going to embrace my diagnosis or try to fix something that was just a part of me.
So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so just as a little bit of an audio description for those who might be listening to the recording later, who may have eyes like mine and may not be able to exactly see. This is a timeline where I kind of go through my acceptance journey, and I believe, and Maddie, maybe you can be an extra set of eyes, but I believe the first piece of it talks about how when I was a kid, I went through all kinds of treatments and things like that. I had Botox injections, no, not for my face, for my legs. And no, it wasn't because of the wrinkles, it was just because Botox is seen as a muscle relaxant. And when I got to high school, as I got older and older and taller and taller and taller, they had to keep upping the dosage. So every 6 months I was getting, it went from 4 to 6 and then 6 to 8. And then before they bumped it up to 10 on me, I said, you know what, I'm done. Because it wasn't helping, and I think that this might be important for people to hear too. It's not a permanent fix for muscle spasms. You have to keep getting poked. And I think that just made me go, not anymore. So then I started, when I was around 15, and am I along with the timeline? I'm not reading off of it, so.
Yeah, so you talked about how you were born with disability and had a lot of treatments to try to search for a cure. And then there was a part in between that and when you talked about your high school decision to stop those treatments, where you talked about in middle school, you started to see a purpose behind your diagnosis by helping others.
In middle school, I started having fun, seeing purposes. I started getting massively into fundraising. One of my very close friends, even to this day, was in need of a piece of medical equipment, and they were needing financial assistance to get that medical equipment. And I said, all right, well, I don't need clothes. I don't need anything for Christmas. I want and I need money. And my family was like, what are you gonna buy? Like, we can buy it for you. And I said, nope, I want money because I need to help my friend get this medical device that they need. So that changed me, and I started to really see deep inside of me. It lit a spark, a candle, whatever you want to call it, inside my heart that said, you know what, maybe this is why I'm disabled. Maybe this is why I was born this way. To actually be able to assist in these types of ways. So then I took it one step further and I became a public speaker. So I started doing a bunch of advocating on stage and off stage, but mostly on stage. My first speeches were in front of the U.S. Department of Education and various other venues. And I love that. And I still do some of it to this day. And that's why I'm so comfortable giving a speech right now. And then through that, through my public speaking work that I was doing, I met my previous boyfriend who changed my life in his own right. So, am I there, Maddie, or did I skip a bunch of stuff?
Nope. Yeah, you went through the whole path that you had talked about.
So I may not be reading verbatim, but it's my life, so I have that gift. But what is on next slide?
Self-esteem in relationships, challenges and facilitators.
Okay. So I might need you to be eyes.
Yep. Some challenges in relationships have included insecurities about appearance, feeling like a burden, dealing with ableist views, and caregiving management. Whereas some facilitators have been partner assurance, including encouraging affirmations as partners, finding unique strengths and responsibilities that each partner in this relationship can do in their based on their own talents and contribute to the relationship, and self-advocacy and partner advocacy.
So I'm sorry, my phone was going off, and thank you for just moving forward. But I am incredibly blessed. I was in a romantically involved relationship for 2 years, and some of those facilitators meant a lot to me. But I'm sure that you can hear a repetitive thing, and that is feeling like a burden, and also the caregiving set of challenges. So caregiving is always going to be a part of my life, and sometimes accepting that can be a process. And that's where my disability pride my pride is sometimes a balloon that can just get cut and pop. And I think that as we look at some of these facilitators and these ways that my ex and I coped, I look back on that relationship and I'm like, interesting, because I learned a lot from it. But if we can go on to the next slide, that would be awesome. And there's a quote here that I'm going to let Maddie be eyes on.
People with disabilities are worthy of relationships. You are not a burden.
So I flipped one of the things that I used to deal with, and I made it into an affirmation for other people. But truthfully, I make it into an affirmation for other people because I need it for myself. And sometimes it's okay as a public speaker to say out loud, hey, I still need affirmations. Because sometimes my pride as a human doesn't let me do that. So if we go forward, so let's see. Is this a toolbox?
Yes.
Okay, so everyone has their own way of coping and dealing with stuff. I, since I was 15, have written a bunch of songs. I love writing songs. It brings me peace. And I just, again, these are a bunch of bubbles. If you think about these as water balloons, like I did with the last thing with bubbles, if you think of these as water balloons, these are things that I throw back at the other water balloons that are labeled with things that are negative. These are my coping mechanisms. If you don't mind just being eyes and reading some of them off,
Yep.
that would be awesome.
Affirmations and mantras, exercise and self-care, developing disability pride, having fun and treating yourself, private journaling, accountability buddy, hobbies, therapy, celebrating yourself and your accomplishments, maintaining professional relationships with your aides, taking steps to take control, finding representation and role models, advocating for your safety.
So taking steps to take control is key for me, at least, because taking back some of that bodily autonomy is always going to be special to me. And notice how I wrote private journaling. I didn't just write journaling. Whatever is on my computer is private. Nobody can see it. Well, other people can see it, but I often, unless I tell people, hey, can I show this to you? I don't share it. Because my computer is my journal. I can type much faster than I can write, and even with that, it's not super fast, but it's much more clear. So I can get things done that way. Privacy is important. If we go on to the next slide, what do we have here? I think these were more statistics.
Yes. The impact of disability acceptance and disability pride on self-esteem. So compared to those with consistently high disability acceptance, those who have consistently low disability acceptance were more than 2 times more likely to have low self-esteem, whereas developing disability pride has been shown to improve self-esteem and overall well-being, as well as to protect against stigma. So even if someone can't make it all the way to developing disability pride, even working on disability acceptance has a huge impact on improving your self-esteem.
If we move on, I'm not sure what the next slide is.
Developing disability pride and acceptance.
This is another text-heavy one, I believe, yeah?
Yes.
So if you don't mind being eyes.
Accepting my diagnosis as a part of me was a critical part of being able to move forward with my life and to find my purpose. It's not always a linear journey, and some days I have an easier time than others in displaying pride in my diagnosis. The way that I display my disability pride is different behind closed doors versus in the public eye. My disability pride often becomes hidden by different barriers, but those barriers only lead me to the next chapter.
I don't know if you guys can catch a theme here. I look at each barrier as a stepping stone. I look at each section of my life as a chapter. You might be able to tell I write songs because I kind of think in poetry. But that's just a huge part of who I am. And that's one of my biggest coping mechanisms. So if we go forward to the next slide. Okay. So this is one of my favorite pictures ever. One of my friends took that for me. Have no fear, a caregiver is very close by, but that picture makes it look like I'm standing against a tree, and that's all it's taking to hold me up. Mind you, to take this picture, my muscles were burning. But anytime at all that I can do stuff physical, I will try and do my best to do that. Does anyone have any questions? Because this ends, right, Maddie, this ends my part of the presentation, but I do want to start a conversation.
Yes, this is the last slide.